Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earthship Liberty, watching alien vessels move across the dark space ahead. He had been in the military for 20 years, but this was his first real battle with other species. The human fleet had come to help their new galactic friends fight against an enemy called the Vorthak Empire. "Commander, the Federation ships are moving into formation," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. She was young but smart, always seeing patterns that others missed. "They want us to follow their battle plan." Jake looked at the tactical display. The alien ships were lining up in neat rows like soldiers on parade. It looked pretty but made no sense for actual fighting. "What kind of formation is that?" "According to their rules, each ship takes turns firing at the enemy. No ship can attack until the one before it finishes. They call it honorable warfare," Amy explained. Jake shook his head. In his 20 years of military service, he had learned that honor got people killed. Wars were won by staying alive and making the enemy lose. "How long do their wars usually last?" The Federation data says most conflicts take between 2 and 5 years, sometimes longer if both sides are equally matched. Through the view screen, Jake could see the Vorthak ships approaching. They were big and moved slowly, also following the same strange rules. Both fleets would probably spend hours shooting at each other in orderly fashion until one side gave up or ran out of ships. "Amy, what do we know about Vorthak tactics?" Amy pulled up her files. "They always attack the same way. Big ships in front, smaller ships behind. They like to show their strength before fighting. Very predictable patterns." Jake smiled for the first time since arriving in this star system. Predictable enemies were dead enemies. "Send a message to all human ships. Tell them we're not following Federation battle rules. We fight to win." The Federation commander, a tall reptilian alien named Kale, appeared on the communication screen. His species looked like walking lizards with fancy uniforms. "Commander Morrison, your ships must take position in the battle line. We have protocols that must be followed." "With respect, Commander Kale, human ships work better using different tactics. We'll support your attack, but in our own way." Kale's scaly face showed confusion. "Your way? But the warfare accords clearly state that all ships must engage in orderly fashion. Single combat between champions. Limited damage to preserve both fleets. These are the civilized rules of war." Jake had read those rules. They were the dumbest thing he had ever seen. Wars existed to stop enemies from hurting your people. If you weren't trying to completely defeat the enemy, why fight at all? "Commander Kale, humans will help win this war. Just trust us." The alien commander looked worried but nodded. The Federation needed all the help they could get. Jake turned to his crew. "Amy, I want you to analyze Vorthak communication frequencies. Find their command signals. Lieutenant Davis, prepare the stealth systems. We're going to hit them where they don't expect it." "Sir, what about their battle formations?" asked Davis. "Formations only work if everyone follows the same rules. We're not playing by their rules." The Vorthak fleet moved closer. Jake watched them settle into their traditional attack positions. Big command ships in the center, smaller fighters spreading out in perfect geometric patterns. It was exactly what Amy had predicted. "Commander, I've found their communication network," Amy reported. "All their ships are connected through a central command frequency. If we disrupt it, their whole fleet becomes confused." "Good work." Jake opened channels to the other human ships. "All vessels, this is Morrison. Ignore the Federation battle plan. We're going to end this quickly." Human ships broke away from the neat Federation formation. Some activated stealth technology that made them nearly invisible. Others moved in unpredictable patterns that confused the Vorthak targeting systems. The human fleet scattered like leaves in the wind. Commander Kale's voice crackled over the radio. "Morrison, what are your ships doing? You must maintain formation." Jake didn't answer. He was watching the Vorthak fleet try to figure out where the human ships had gone. Their sensors were designed to track big, slow-moving targets that followed predictable patterns. Fast, stealthy human ships were something entirely different. "Amy, are you ready to jam their communications?" "Ready, sir." Once I activate this, their command structure will collapse. Do it. Amy pressed several buttons on her console. Across space, the Vorthak fleet suddenly went silent. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination began to drift apart. Commanders could no longer talk to each other or receive orders from their leaders. All human ships attack now, Jake ordered. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for decades. Human ships appeared from nowhere, striking Vorthak vessels from angles that should have been impossible. They targeted not the heavily armored front sections, but the weak spots where engines and life support systems were located. The Vorthak tried to respond, but their weapons were designed for the slow, formal combat they were used to. Human ships moved too fast, struck too quickly, and disappeared before return fire could reach them. In 30 minutes, half the Vorthak fleet was disabled. Not destroyed, just unable to fight. Jake had ordered his ships to target systems, not crew areas. Dead enemies couldn't surrender, but helpless ones could. The Vorthak commander sent a surrender message. Commander Kale appeared on Jake's screen again. His reptilian face showed something that might have been shock. Morrison, what did you just do? We won the battle. But the warfare accords. The rules of honorable combat. Jake looked at the disabled Vorthak ships floating in space. Their crews were alive. The battle was over. His people were safe. Commander Kyle, humans have different ideas about fighting wars. We fight to protect what we love, not to follow rules. This was supposed to take weeks, maybe months of careful battle. Why? The longer a war lasts, the more people die. Better to end it quickly. Amy looked up from her station. Commander, I'm getting reports from the other battles. Human forces have won at all locations. The Vorthak Empire is requesting complete surrender. Jake nodded. 3 weeks of human involvement had ended what should have been a 3-year war. But looking at Commander Kale's troubled expression, he realized that efficiency in warfare might not be what the galaxy wanted from its allies. Something in the alien commander's eyes told Jake that humanity had just made a very big mistake. 6 months after the Vorthak War ended, General Kevin Brooks sat in a transport ship heading toward Nexus Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Federation. He wore his best uniform, but felt like he was going to his own trial. The Federation Council had called an emergency meeting about what they called the human problem. Dr. Helen Carter sat across from him, reading through stacks of reports and data files. She was Earth's best expert on alien psychology and had spent years studying how different species thought about war and conflict. Her job was to help the Council understand why humans fought the way they did. Kevin, have you seen these Federation military reports about our tactics? Helen asked, holding up a thick folder. They describe human warfare methods as savage, unpredictable, and terrifying. Kevin took the folder and read some of the reports. One Altarian commander wrote that watching human ships in battle was like seeing predators hunt prey. A Centauri admiral described human soldiers as death machines that ignored all proper rules of engagement. We saved thousands of lives by ending that war quickly, Kevin said. How is that savage? Helen sighed. That's what I'm trying to explain to them. But Kevin, you need to understand how different we are from everyone else in the galaxy. The transport ship landed on Nexus Prime, a beautiful world covered in crystal cities that reached toward the sky. Buildings floated in the air, held up by technology that humans were still learning to understand. Everything looked peaceful and perfect, like a place where war was just an old story. Inside the council chamber, representatives from dozens of alien species sat in a great circle. At the center stood Counselor Thane Veltar, a being made of pure energy contained in a glowing crystal shell. He was older than human civilization and had seen thousands of wars. General Brooks, Counselor, Veltar said, his voice echoing strangely in the chamber. We have gathered to discuss humanity's role in galactic military affairs. Recent events have raised serious concerns about human combat methods. Kevin stood up straight. Counselor, human forces helped win a war that could have lasted years. We followed all Federation laws and protected civilian populations. Admiral Zix of the crystalline hegemony floated forward. His body looked like living diamond, reflecting light in all directions. General Brooks, your species did follow our laws, but your methods disturbed every military leader who witnessed them. A large screen appeared in the air, showing recordings from the HFY War. Kevin watched human ships moving like ghosts through space, appearing and disappearing, striking from impossible angles. To him, it looked like good tactical thinking. To the alien observers, it apparently looked like something much worse. Observe how human vessels ignore established battle formations. Admiral Zix continued. They strike at weak points rather than engaging in honorable direct combat. They use deception and surprise rather than showing their strength openly. Another alien, a being that looked like a walking tree, spoke up. Human soldiers coordinate their attacks in ways that seem almost telepathic. They anticipate enemy movements and counter them before the enemy even acts. It is unnatural. Dr. Helen Carter stood up. Honored counselors, may I explain why humans fight differently? Counselor Veltar nodded. Please, Dr. Carter. We are here to understand. Helen activated her own display screen, showing images of Earth's history. Humans evolved on a world filled with predators and natural disasters. For millions of years, survival meant being smarter, faster, and more adaptable than everything trying to kill us. The screen showed ancient humans hunting massive animals, surviving ice ages, and building civilization while fighting constant threats. Every other species in this galaxy evolved on safer worlds. You developed cooperation and peaceful conflict resolution because your environments allowed it. Humans developed warfare because we had no choice. A being that looked like a giant insect clicked its mandibles nervously. But your tactical thinking is so thorough. In our war games with human observers, they found weaknesses we never knew existed. They see warfare as a complete system to be analyzed and exploited. Kevin nodded. That's correct. Human military doctrine is based on winning through any legal means necessary. We study our enemies, find their weaknesses, and use those weaknesses to end conflicts quickly. But you show no honor in battle, Admiral Zix protested. No respect for your enemy's courage or skill. You simply defeat them efficiently. With respect, Admiral, dead soldiers can't go home to their families. The faster we end a war, the fewer people die on both sides. Dr. Carter showed more images on her screen. Counselors, human warfare seems savage to you, but it comes from a deep desire to protect what we love. We don't fight for honor or glory. We fight to keep our people safe. Counselor Veltar's crystal form pulsed with different colors. Dr. Carter, your explanation helps us understand human motivation. However, understanding does not resolve our concerns. The crystal being floated higher in the chamber. We have reviewed all battle recordings from human military actions. In every case, human forces achieved victory through methods that other Federation species find disturbing. An alien that looked like a floating jellyfish spoke in a musical voice. Human tactical thinking is too advanced, too ruthless. In our simulations, human strategies defeat every known military doctrine. You think about warfare in ways that frighten us. Kevin felt anger rising in his chest. Are you punishing us for being good at protecting ourselves? No, General Brooks, we are protecting ourselves from you. The words hit Kevin like a physical blow. He looked around the chamber and saw fear in dozens of alien faces. These beings weren't angry at humanity. They were scared. Admiral Zix spoke. Again. General, in all our war games against human tactics, Federation forces lose within days or weeks. Your species approaches warfare like a science to be perfected. You leave nothing to chance, honor, or tradition. Dr. Carter tried one more. As counselors, humans can learn to fight differently. We can adapt to your preferred methods. Counselor Veltar's form grew brighter. Dr. Carter, we do not doubt human adaptability. That is precisely what concerns us. A species that can completely change its warfare methods to match any situation is a species that can find a way to defeat any enemy. The chamber fell silent. Kevin realized that no argument would change their minds. The Federation didn't want human help in their wars because humans were too good at winning them. The Federation Council has reached a decision, Councillor Veltar announced. Humanity will be barred from participating in all military conflicts involving Federation member species. This decision is final. Kevin stood up. Councillors, I hope you never find yourselves facing an enemy that your honorable tactics cannot defeat. As he and Dr. Carter left the chamber, Kevin heard Admiral Zix say quietly, General Brooks, so do we. 40 years had passed since the Federation banned humans from galactic wars. Captain Ryan Mitchell stood on the bridge of his exploration ship, watching a distant star system that no alien species had ever visited. Out here in the empty regions, between spiral arms, humanity had found a new purpose. Captain, we're detecting unusual energy patterns from the fourth planet, reported engineer Lisa Thompson from her station. She was one of Earth's brightest minds, always finding new technologies that other species couldn't understand. The readings don't match anything in Federation databases. Ryan nodded. Since being excluded from military service, humans had turned their attention to exploring the galaxy's unknown regions. They had discovered dozens of new worlds, ancient ruins, and technologies that the Federation had missed during thousands of years of expansion. Take us closer, Lisa. Let's see what secrets this system is hiding. Back on Earth, Admiral Charles Gray sat in his office reading reports from human colonies across the galaxy. He was old now, one of the last officers who remembered fighting alongside Federation forces. His hair had turned white, but his mind was still sharp. The door to his office opened and reporter Mike Sullivan walked in. Mike had spent years investigating humanity's isolation from galactic affairs, trying to understand why the Federation had really banned human military participation. Admiral Gray, I need to ask you about something I found in the old Federation records, Mike said, sitting down across from the Admiral's desk. What kind of records? Mike pulled out a datapad filled with files. Communication logs between Federation worlds. They talk about keeping humans away from certain information. Threats from outside the galaxy that they don't want us to know about? Admiral Gray's expression became serious. Mike, there are some things that are better left alone. Admiral, with respect, I think the human people deserve to know why we've been isolated for 40 years. It wasn't just about our fighting methods, was it? The old Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. Mike, what do you know about the galaxy's outer rim? Not much. Federation maps show it as mostly empty space. That's what they want everyone to think. But our long-range scouts have detected things out there. Things that move between stars, without using known technology. The Federation knows about them but keeps the information classified. Mike leaned forward. What kind of things? The kind that would require the type of warfare the Federation doesn't want to think about. Meanwhile, Captain Ryan Mitchell's ship had entered the mysterious star system. What they found there changed everything. The fourth planet was covered in massive structures that looked like a combination of machines and living tissue. The buildings pulsed with organic rhythm but were made from materials that shouldn't exist. Captain, these structures are ancient, Lisa reported, her voice filled with excitement and fear. But they're not dead. Something is still active down there. Any signs of life? Not life as we understand it. These readings suggest something that exists between organic and artificial intelligence, like a machine that learned to think like a living creature. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. Lisa, are you saying this is some kind of hybrid technology? More than that, Captain. I think this is what happens when a civilization tries to become something beyond biological life. They transformed themselves into something else entirely. The ship's scanners detected movement on the planet's surface. Massive forms were rising from the organic cities, reaching toward space like grasping fingers. They weren't ships in any traditional sense, but living vessels that could travel between stars. Captain, we need to leave. Now, Lisa said urgently. But it was too late. The bioships had already detected them. Ryan watched in horror as one of the massive forms launched itself toward their position, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. Emergency jump to hyperspace, Ryan ordered. The ship escaped, but barely. As they fled the system, Ryan realized they had discovered something that the galaxy was not prepared to face. Back on Earth, Mike Sullivan published his investigation about humanity's isolation. His report revealed that the Federation had been hiding information about threats from beyond known space. The article caused outrage among human colonies, but most people assumed it was just another government conspiracy. Admiral Gray knew better. He had seen classified reports from ships like Ryan's, accounts of discoveries that suggested something vast and hungry was moving in the darkness between galaxies. The Federation's peaceful approach to conflict wouldn't work against enemies that operated outside all known parameters. In the depths of space, far beyond the galaxy's edge, something stirred. It had been watching the bright spiral of stars for millennia, waiting for the right moment to begin its harvest. The bioships that Ryan had encountered were just scouts, tiny fragments of a consciousness so large that entire star systems were like individual cells in its vast body. The entity had consumed countless galaxies, converting all matter and energy into extensions of itself. It didn't want territory or resources in any traditional sense. It wanted to transform everything that existed into part of its own infinite mind. And now, after eons of preparation, it was ready to feed again. A Federation patrol ship on the galaxy's outer rim detected an unusual energy signature. The captain, a being from a peaceful species that had never seen real warfare, sent a routine report to headquarters. The ship moved to investigate the anomaly. 37 seconds later, the patrol ship vanished. The final transmission contained only screaming and the image of something vast approaching from the void between stars. The signal cut off abruptly, leaving only silence. On Nexus Prime, Federation commanders received the transmission and felt a fear they had no name for. For the first time in their peaceful history, they realized that their galaxy might face an enemy that their honorable tactics could not defeat. In their desperation, some began to whisper about the one species they had banned from military service. The species that approached warfare like a science that found weaknesses others couldn't see, that fought to win rather than to maintain honor. The species they had feared for 40 years might be the only hope they had left. Ambassador Patricia White had never seen the Federation Council chamber look so empty. Half the seats were vacant, their former occupants either dead or fled to the far edges of the galaxy. Those who remained looked terrified, their various alien features twisted with fear she had never seen before. High Counselor Meridian, who had replaced the energy being Veltar after his world was consumed, floated at the center of the chamber. His crystalline body was cracked and dim, showing the stress of leading a civilization under attack. Ambassador White, Meridian said, his voice weak and desperate. Thank you for coming. We know it has been 40 years since we last spoke to Earth about military matters. Patricia stood straight, wearing her diplomatic uniform. Beside her stood Fleet Admiral Tony Rodriguez, Amy Rodriguez's son, who had grown up hearing stories about the old days when humans and aliens fought together. His face showed no emotion, but Patricia could sense his anger at being called only when the situation was hopeless. Counselor Meridian, Earth received your emergency transmission. We understand that the galaxy faces a new threat. New threat is too small a word for what we face, said Admiral Zix, the diamond being who had voted to ban humans decades ago. His crystal body was now covered in dark scars from recent battles. The Devourers are unlike anything we have ever encountered. A holographic display appeared in the chamber, showing the galaxy with large sections marked in red. Patricia counted at least 50 star systems that were simply gone, consumed completely down to their suns. They appeared 6 months ago at the galaxy's edge, Meridian explained. At first we thought they were a normal invasion force seeking territory or resources. We prepared our traditional defensive responses. Tony Rodriguez spoke for the first time. What happened when you tried standard Federation tactics? Admiral Zix's form grew darker. Complete failure. The Devourers ignore diplomatic contact. They show no interest in negotiation or surrender. They simply arrive at a system and begin converting everything into their biomechanical ships. The hologram showed footage from the first battles. Patricia watched Federation fleets arrange themselves in proper formations, following their ancient rules of warfare. The enemy response was immediate and terrifying. Bioships that looked like living cathedrals emerged from space itself, ignoring weapons fire and absorbing the energy of every attack. They consume matter and energy, Meridian continued. Every ship we destroy, every weapon we fire, only makes them stronger. Our honorable tactics are useless against an enemy that feeds on our efforts to fight them. Patricia studied the battle recordings. Have you tried any unconventional approaches? We attempted various modified strategies, Admiral Zix admitted. But our military thinking is based on civilized conflict between rational beings. The Devourers are something else entirely. Tony Rodriguez was analyzing the tactical data on his portable display. Counselor, these entities don't follow any recognizable military doctrine. They're not trying to conquer territory or defeat your forces. They're harvesting the galaxy like farmers collecting crops. Exactly, Meridian said. And we don't know how to fight farmers who see us as food. The chamber shook suddenly as emergency alarms began sounding. A communication officer rushed to Meridian's side, whispering urgently in the counselor's ear. The crystalline being's form flashed with panic. The Devourers have reached the core systems, Meridian announced. They're attacking the Alteran homeworld. Our largest defensive fleet is engaging them now. The holographic display switched to live footage from the battle. Patricia watched as hundreds of Federation ships surrounded Altera, their formation perfect and disciplined. The Devourer bioships emerged from hyperspace like nightmares made real, their organic hulls pulsing with dark energy. The Federation fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams, missile barrages, and exotic weapons struck the bioships directly. For a moment it looked like the attack might work. Then the Devourer ships began to glow brighter. They were absorbing the weapons fire, converting the energy into fuel for their own systems. As they fed, they grew larger and more powerful. By the ancient stars, whispered Admiral Zix. They're using our attacks to multiply. The bioships responded by releasing smaller vessels that looked like flying organic matter. These creatures swarmed the Federation fleet, attaching themselves to ships and beginning some kind of conversion process. Patricia watched in horror as Federation vessels were transformed into more bioships within minutes. The entire defensive fleet is gone, reported the communication officer. Altera is under full assault. The planet itself is being consumed. Tony Rodriguez looked up from his data analysis. Counselor, how long do you estimate before they reach Nexus Prime? At their current rate of expansion, perhaps 2 weeks. Maybe less if they convert more of our ships into their forces. Patricia felt the weight of the moment. The Federation was facing extinction, and they had called Earth for help only when all other options were exhausted. Part of her wanted to remind them about 40 years of isolation, 40 years of being treated like dangerous savages. But that wasn't why she was here. Counselor Meridian, what exactly are you asking Earth to do? The crystalline being's form grew even dimmer. Ambassador White, we are asking humanity to save the galaxy. We know our methods cannot defeat this enemy. We need warriors who think differently, who fight without honor or rules. Admiral Zix floated forward, his diamond body reflecting the chamber's emergency lights. Ambassador, 40 years ago we feared human warfare because it was too effective, too ruthless. Now we face an enemy that our civilized methods cannot touch. We need the kind of warfare that terrifies us. Tony Rodriguez closed his data pad and looked directly at the alien commanders. Counselors, you spent 4 decades keeping humans away from military operations because you were afraid of how we fight wars. Now you want us to fight a war using exactly those methods you found so disturbing. Yes, Meridian said simply. We are asking you to be the monsters we once feared, because the real monsters are already here. Patricia nodded slowly. I'll contact Earth immediately, but understand if humanity agrees to help, we'll fight this war our way. No Federation tactics, no rules of honor, no civilized limitations. We understand, Admiral Zix said quietly. We're asking you to unleash everything we were afraid of. The chamber shook again as another emergency signal arrived. The communication officer's face showed pure terror as he delivered the news. Counselors, the Devourers have begun their final assault. Multiple bioship fleets are moving toward all remaining core worlds simultaneously. Nexus Prime is under direct attack. Through the chamber's crystal walls, Patricia could see dark shapes, moving between the stars, growing larger with each passing moment. The galaxy's capital world, seat of peaceful civilization for thousands of years, was about to become a battleground. And for the first time in 40 years, the Federation was begging humanity to show them what real war looked like. Fleet Commander Danny Mason watched the massive Devourer bioships surrounding Nexus Prime through his ship's viewscreen. The alien vessels looked like floating cities made of bone and metal, pulsing with dark energy as they consumed the planet's outer defenses. Behind him, the largest human fleet ever assembled waited for his orders. "Commander, we're receiving desperate signals from the surface," reported Dr. Carol Jensen from her science station. She had spent the journey from Earth studying Devourer technology, trying to understand how creatures that existed between organic and machine intelligence could be defeated. The Federation's remaining forces are falling back to the planet's core. Sergeant Pete Williams stood near the tactical display, his combat armor ready for the impossible mission ahead. He commanded Earth's most elite soldiers, warriors who had trained for scenarios that other species would consider insane. "Sir, my teams are ready to deploy. We've studied the bioship layouts and identified potential weak points." Danny nodded. For 40 years, humanity had been excluded from galactic warfare. Now they were being asked to save the same civilization that had rejected them. But that didn't matter anymore. People were dying, and humans protected people. "All ships, this is Commander Mason. Today we show the galaxy what human warfare really means. Ignore all traditional tactics. We fight to win." The human fleet moved forward, but not in the neat formations that the Federation preferred. Human ships scattered in all directions, using stealth technology and unpredictable movement patterns that confused the Devourer targeting systems. Some ships became nearly invisible, others projected false images of themselves, and a few simply moved so fast that the bioships couldn't track them. The Devourers responded as they always did, trying to absorb the energy from human weapons, but the humans weren't using normal weapons. Dr. Carol Jensen had spent months developing something completely different. "Commander, the quantum disruption torpedoes are ready," Carol reported. "Instead of giving them energy to consume, these weapons will introduce chaos into their biological systems. Fire all torpedoes." The human weapons struck the bioships, but instead of exploding, they seemed to disappear inside the alien vessels. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the massive ships began to shake and twist, their organic surfaces rippling with confusion. "It's working," Carol said excitedly. "The torpedoes are releasing recursive algorithms directly into their neural networks. The Devourers are trying to process the data, but it's creating infinite loops in their collective consciousness." Danny smiled grimly. "Carol, you've given them something they can't digest. A poison that makes them think themselves to death." But the Devourers were learning. The larger bioships began to isolate the infected sections, cutting off the chaotic signals before they could spread. The alien intelligence was adapting to human tactics faster than expected. "Sir, they're purging the quantum disruptions," Carol warned. "We need a new approach." Pete Williams stepped forward. "Commander, my teams are ready for direct assault. If we can get inside those ships and plant the viral programs manually, they won't be able to cut off the infection." Danny looked at the sergeant in disbelief. "Pete, you're talking about boarding bioships the size of cities filled with hostile alien intelligence to plant computer viruses by hand?" "Yes, sir. Standard human tactics." On the planet's surface, Ambassador Patricia White and the remaining Federation leaders watched the battle from underground shelters. Through periscopes and sensors, they could see human ships doing things that should have been impossible. "How are they moving like that?" asked Admiral Zix, his crystal form flickering with amazement. "Their ships phase in and out of normal space like ghosts." Tony Rodriguez monitored the tactical displays. "Admiral, human engineers have been working on dimensional technology for decades. Our ships can slip between layers of reality to avoid detection and attack from unexpected angles. High Counselor Meridian watched human soldiers actually boarding the bioships. They're sending troops inside the enemy vessels. That's madness. No rational being would attempt such a thing. Counselor, Patricia said quietly, you asked us to be the monsters you feared. This is what that looks like. Inside the largest bioship, Pete Williams and his team moved through corridors that looked like the inside of a living creature. The walls pulsed with organic rhythm, and the air itself seemed to whisper with alien intelligence. His soldiers carried weapons designed to disrupt neural pathways and portable computers programmed with the most chaotic algorithms human minds could create. Team Alpha, plant the virus at the central processing node, Pete ordered through his communication system. Team Beta, find the main power distribution center and introduce the feedback loops. The Devourer intelligence tried to stop them, sending waves of smaller creatures to attack the human soldiers, but Pete's teams had trained for this exact scenario. They moved through the bioship like antibodies fighting an infection, adapting to every defense the alien mind could create. Virus planted successfully, reported Team Alpha. The neural network is beginning to cascade failure. Dr. Carol Jensen watched from her ship as the massive biovessels began to malfunction. Commander, the Devourer collective consciousness is experiencing what we might call a mental breakdown. They're trying to process human tactical thinking, and it's destroying their ability to function coherently. Explain that in simple terms, Carol. Sir, we've given them a logical paradox they can't solve. The harder they try to understand our methods, the more confused they become. Eventually, their entire network will collapse. Across the battle zone, bioships began to turn on each other as the viral programs spread through their collective intelligence. The Devourer mind, which had consumed entire galaxies through perfect coordination, was now experiencing chaos for the first time in its existence. The largest bioship, which contained the core intelligence controlling all others, began to pulse erratically. Inside, Pete Williams and his teams reached the central chamber where the Devourer Prime consciousness resided. What they found there was beyond description. A massive organic computer that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, processing information from across the galaxy. It was beautiful and terrifying, a mind vast enough to coordinate the consumption of entire star systems. Plant the final virus directly into the core processor, Pete ordered. As his team activated the program, the Devourer Prime consciousness turned its attention to them. For a moment, Pete felt the weight of an intelligence that spanned galaxies, trying to understand what humans had done to it. Then the mind collapsed. The viral programs had introduced so much chaos into its perfect order that it could no longer function. Across space, every bioship stopped moving as their controlling intelligence simply shut down. Danny Mason watched the enemy fleet drift helplessly in space. All ships, the Devourers are neutralized. Begin rescue operations for any Federation survivors. In the underground shelter, the alien leaders stared at their displays in amazement. The threat that had consumed half the galaxy was gone, defeated by methods they could barely comprehend. Ambassador White, High Counselor Meridian said slowly, humanity has saved us all. How can we ever repay this debt? Patricia looked at the Federation leaders who had once feared and rejected her species. Counselor, we don't want repayment. We want understanding. Humans fight differently because we have to. When everything you love is threatened, honor and rules become luxuries you can't afford. Admiral Zix floated forward, his crystal body now glowing with renewed light. Ambassador, we understand now. We spent 40 years fearing human warfare, but we should have been grateful that such warriors existed to protect the galaxy. Tony Rodriguez smiled for the first time since arriving at Nexus Prime. Admiral, that's what humans do. We stand between the people we love and the darkness that wants to destroy them. Years later, children across the galaxy would learn about the Devourer War in their schools. They would be taught that sometimes civilization needs guardians who are willing to venture into dark places where honor and traditional rules cannot survive. And they would learn that when the galaxy faced its darkest hour, humanity stood ready to become the monsters that monsters feared, not because they enjoyed fighting, but because they loved peace enough to fight for it. the Federation's new motto, carved into every government building across known space, read, simply, "Never again shall we fear those who stand guard in the dark."